Okay, Jen, it looks like we are actually live inside the Facebook group. Um, like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but today it's working. And so I know, yay for technology today. So, Jen, thank you so much for joining me. Hey, if you're hopping in and watching us, I hope you get to see this. If you're watching live and you want to comment and join the conversation, please click on the link in the description that says that you want to give. I can actually see who you are. Jen can actually see who you actually, I don't know if you can even see these comments. You probably can't, but I will read them to you if somebody comments. But otherwise, I just know you as Facebook user. So I want to know who you are. Hard time. It's already, see, technology. We were celebrating it and it's already, who knows. But anyway, we're back again. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Ooh, it looks like somebody is watching. That might just be you. Oh, it's Victoria, our girl. Woo, woo, woo. Hey, Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria.
Jen and I could really talk together, just she and I all day, but it is nice to know that someone else is joining the conversation. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much. So, but let's go ahead and get started. So this is in this week's episode of In the Trenches Live, I am talking with my good friend, Jen Runyon. We had to figure out exactly where she was in the world, though, because I wanted her to be in Georgia, and she's actually in Ohio. So, Jen, will you please tell people where you are in the world and what you do for your church? Go ahead and tell us who you are.
So I am in Tip City, Ohio. So that is about 15 minutes north of Dayton, if that helps any of you. I am the communications director here at Tip City United Methodist Church, and also the volunteer side of things. I am the middle school small group leader.
And we could spend the whole rest of our time together today talking about what it's like to be a leader of a small group leader for middle school, because I used to be a middle school English teacher.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I have two high schoolers now, but they were in middle school, but also very sweet time, like a very good time. So, kudos to you for being in the trenches with those middle schoolers, because they need us, right? Even if they act like they don't.
Yes.
And I love that you are still finding a way so you work, you get paid, but you're also still volunteering, which I know can sometimes be difficult. And so that's really good that you're finding a way to continue to do that and find some joy in that. I also saw, though, where you said you're also part of worship design. So can you talk a little bit about that? And before we get into everything else, that's not really what we were expecting in that. So
Yeah. So, I mean, communications is a big part of worship as well, especially now that so much is online. We were working to live stream our services for months, and we actually went live a week before COVID shut everything down.
I have heard that so many times that people were like, we just happened to be able to get it going right before, or, in our case, like not, but we didn't.
So back on target here, kind of. I mean, we're off on a tangent.
Yeah.
But I do like graphic design and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some video stuff that I've just kind of taught myself along the way.
Right.
So that's really like
Gotcha.
where I'm involved with worship. So, and then of course advertising it when we start a new series and that sort of thing.
Well, and you do bring up a point. All of that is part of communications. Everything we say and do, and everything communicates. And so as a church communications director, having kind of your pulse on all of that is so important. But going back to the whole middle school thing, which reminds me of the thing that we really are going to talk about today, which is recently, this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this week, is recently you had the opportunity to use text in church in a way that we don't typically talk about a lot at text in church, because we're all about that guest follow up and that plan a visit and all that kind of stuff. But you were telling us in one of our little groups, being on a mission trip with the youth and using text in church to help communicate during that time. So I want you to just tell us a little bit about how that helped y'all as you were leading that trip with your youth.
Um, so we have a wonderful leader with our students. She actually does third grade to fifth grade.
Wow.
And the program for the older kids has been growing, just kind of starting from scratch. And
Yeah.
but so this leader had like all of the information, all of the contact information for these kids and parents, and everybody went to her for everything.
Right.
So then when it was time to transition up, they don't have relationships with anybody else. So
Right.
that was tough. And, unfortunately, like we had lost a lot of kids. And
Mm.
but now with the mission trip, we started using text in church. I've got it on the apps on the phone
Yeah.
for other leaders who went on the trip. So everybody throughout the whole week, we were able to send updates about what's going on. And they came from all three of the leaders.
Right.
So that was a great way to like develop relationships with the parents, and it doesn't put all the responsibility on one person.
Right. Because, one of the things that we talk about a lot of times is like, yeah, a lot of small, especially small churches or, churches that have, gradually built a program, they were using their cell phone, they were using their cell number, they're giving that out, and that works for a while, and until a transition happens, whether it's the children transitioning to youth, whether it is a person transitioning into another role and then somebody else is coming in, and then it's confusing, and like you say, it's kind of hard to separate. But when you're using text in church and you have that local number that people, whether it's Jen that's running the mission trip, or Jeanette or Victoria, or all of us, we can all communicate with those parents using the same phone number.
Mhm.
And it helps develop a little rapport with a potential new leader, right?
Right.
So I just love that. And of course, mission trip is something that's like, you're not going to use that. Well, you might use that group again, but like that's a specific group of kids. Not every kid goes. So you're not wanting to blast text all the youth when only this many youth went. So having that group for that specific time period and using it is a very good way to not use text that you don't need to use, or message
Yes.
people that don't want to know all the stuff that's going on the mission trip because their kids aren't on it. So I think that's a very helpful tip, and something kind of obvious, but if you don't think about it, then you might just be like, oh, we'll just use the youth text line and just do that, or I'll just use my cell phone. But those are you explained why it's better to have one central location. So another thing, just in general, so that was a special short-term youth mission trip group that you use to communicate multiple leaders. How does your church use it week in and week out? Like, how did you get started using text in church? I guess is a better question. Like, let's start there.
So we started using text in church for guest follow-up. We started way back when I was the only one using it.
Right.
And it just wasn't getting used very often.
Right.
We definitely weren't taking advantage of it. But then whenever COVID shut things down and we were live streaming only on Sundays, we gave the option for people to text the word here. And And in the beginning, that's all we were doing.
Right.
And then I, God really told me, like, you need to step this up. You can do more. People need somewhere to go and they need to know that their church is there for them. So I started using after they would text here. So even if they watch our service on a Monday or a Tuesday, whatever,
Okay.
um, they'll get the text the next day that says, it was great worshiping with you yesterday. Is there any way we can pray for you this week? And it's just from the staff.
Yeah.
Um, and so then we get responses, and that's all that was happening.
Yeah.
And then God again was, and I started taking those prayer requests that we would get to our, what kind of action, do we need to send a card? Do they need a phone call? Does this, who should take care on my end for middle school? I use Text in Church every week, every Saturday. I send out a text to the kids and the parents, letting them know what we're going to be doing on
Yeah.
Sunday.
When I first started doing, when we first started using Text in Church, I loved how our youth director would always, she did a couple different things. So she would do like, this is the theme of the week, because there's always some fun theme, dress like a taco, what, who knows, always something silly going on youth night. But then another thing that she did, which is, kind of, that little touch point, is she would text the kids at 6:30 in the morning on Wednesday during the school year, because she knew they were all up getting ready, no matter what school, private, public, everybody's up by 6:30, because, and that was such a great touch point. So I love also how you're kind of like just slowly building with your church, and that's okay. Like a lot of times, yes, we have the 6-week follow-up plan. Yes, we have the plan a visit, workflow, all of those things. But sometimes your church just needs to start where they are. Well, every time, all churches need to just start where you are and do what you can. And that may not be all, you don't have to utilize all the parts of Text in Church right away. You use what your church needs. And it sounds like when the time came, you felt that call to more connection points, more touch points with your church, which I really love. And did you see, as you're asking them to pray and stuff like that, did you start to see responses coming back in and all that kind of stuff?
So we would get the prayer requests, and then say we decided somebody was going to call, um we we would usually maybe see that person in church on Sunday who we hadn't seen in a
Yeah.
while. Definitely, when you make that
Gotcha.
connection, it helps them, just to feel known, noticed, and loved.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is such a good, I love that you said that, because sometimes we want some sort of, like, well, how many responses did I get to the text? How can I pray for you? And it may not sound like a lot. But then when you know that you've connected with a person that way by sending that text, and then you see them, you're like, well, they may not have answered the text, but they knew I was trying to connect with them, and that made a difference. Like
Yeah.
that kind of, you can still, they're there, so it's tangible, but at the same time, like it's kind of like one of those just relationship building things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really like that. Now, one of the things that we talked about before, and we're really going to get into it here. We talked about before we got in, went live, was, and we've kind of hit on this a little bit. Sometimes it's not all, things don't go off like, I don't know what my grandma used to say, like it didn't go off like gangbusters. It didn't go off like gangbusters. And, things didn't, immediately you started using Text in Church and things skyrocketed. So you've already talked about how, like, from the different ways to use it standpoint, you were just kind of, you were the only one using it. You're building up. But on the staff side, how did that go when you started using Text in Church and you were like, I'm sure you were, if you were like me, you were super excited about it. Like, Text in Church sounds really great. And you're like, bring it to staff meeting and it's all exciting. And then what?
So we I kind of feel like I've been, fighting an uphill battle with text and
Yes.
church. Um, and so like you said earlier, whenever we were chatting, it was just kind of like, this is my area, so I'm going to use it here.
Right.
And then the staff was able to see the success. Um, we've tried, other staff members have tried using other programs and just haven't gotten anywhere near the kind of engagement that I was getting with text in church. So it's picking up momentum.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Well, that is such an important thing to remember too, is, yes, we want to come in and, whenever you come back from a conference or you find a new tool online, or you see a ad on, Instagram or something, and you're like, and you're excited about it. And then you bring it, and not everybody's, because, and I get where they're coming from too. It's like, I've got to learn something else,
Right.
like, I don't want to have to do that. This is what I did at my church too, was like, I can't make you use it. If you're already using something and you think that works okay, that's fine, but I'm in charge of this particular thing. And this is going to make my life easier for my job, and me more efficient. So I'm going to use it for you know, my sphere of influence. So for me, when I started using text in church, I wasn't in charge of guest follow-up, but I was in charge of communications, and it helped me to go in and have those different groups so that I wasn't having to send a text or email blast out to every single person on our list just to tell the 5 people on the whatever committee that the room had changed.
Yeah.
Like I could just text those people. And so for me, that really helped, where I wasn't, because until then it was like an email blast only kind of situation. We had one email list and we didn't even have texting kind of stuff, but that was really helpful for me. And then we started using it, for our guest follow-up. So, it was kind of one of those switcheroos. But anyway, I appreciated your willingness to be like, yeah, just so people know, it's not everybody is super, excited all the time to try a new tool.
Yeah, and it's definitely worth the fight.
Yeah.
um and I understand, like you said, people are like, I don't want to learn a new thing. So I feel like we just kind of have to show them why it's worth it. And it's super easy.
Right. I was just going to say, and I didn't pay you to say that, but since you mentioned that, I do want to mention that we also do live trainings once a week for our members on Thursday. So I'll be doing one here in a couple of hours. So you, as a staff member who already knows how to use text in church, you don't also training everyone else on your staff how to use it if they decide they want to use it. You can say, great, I'll show you a couple of things, but really you should go to this live training. And of course, our member experience team is full of people who, are using text in church. They probably used it at their church too. They've helped thousands of churches, so they're really great at it. And I tell people whenever they do come to the live training, sometimes I'm like, listen, I still have to ask them sometimes things, because things are, the app is constantly updating, and we're adding new things. And so it's okay to reach out to our member experience team. But since you brought up how easy it is to use, I also wanted to make sure people knew, yes, it's easy. And we try to make it, we try to make it easy for you to just kind of like intuitive, like it's kind of easy to use, but also, you don't have to figure it out on your own. We do have our team. But, well, Jen, I am so thankful that you hopped on here with me today for this short edition of In the Trenches Live. We do this at least once a month. We might even try to up it soon. But if you have any questions for Jen and how she is using text in church, or if you want to know more about the live trainings that we have, or any other resources from our text in church, please drop a comment and we will get back to you. Jen is always in the Facebook group. We love hanging out in this Facebook group. I'm always in here. I'm sure if you tag her, she'll help you answer a question or point you towards a text and church person. Like you don't have to be a troubleshooter for everybody, Jen, just so you know. But you're really good at at helping people get to the right place. So thank you. Do you have anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Well, I just wanted to say, correct myself. I said that we started using text in church with guest follow-up, but I had a light bulb moment. It actually was to have, we call it our plugged in list.
Yeah.
Because people were forgetting things. They would hear about it on Sunday. That was a constant complaint that I heard.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot about that. So we started this plugged in list so I could send out reminders of things. And that's how we started. And one more thing, that's like what I'm known for. I always have one more thing.
Hey, that's okay.
We use the customer support team. I worked with, I can't remember her name now, but
Emily,
someone,
Nina, Stephanie, Randlin.
Maybe it was Emily. I think it was Emily.
Yeah.
But leading up to the mission trip with the youth, because I knew I was going to have 2 other leaders who were going to be using text in church for the first time, who weren't necessarily on board with it.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that I had everything as figured out as possible, as easy to use for them as possible. So I did reach out a few, I sent a few different questions, and we actually did a meeting kind of like this, and she talked me through some things. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. It's okay.
I know when they watch this later, they're going to be so happy that you said that. And they will do a video call with you if you need to. So yes, they do use the chat feature inside, the help chat, but those are real people talking. It's not a bot, and they will actually do a face-to-face if you need to. Well, thank you so much, Jen. Victoria, thank you for showing up. I see some other people, but I don't see your names. I think April was hopping in there. I saw some other people. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. And we'll be back next month for another round of In the Trenches Live. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.